the little poster there to tell us what we are doing here. And now we have time because now I have no pressure because the next session can go on as long as you want. So diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and mediation. Of course, Michelle has suggested the topic, and this is very close to her heart. But before that, Shelley, please, about the conference. Please tell us about the conference. What is it all about? What's been happening? Please.
Well, the conference is all about bringing mediators, people together to discuss topics that are, I guess, near and dear to their heart. I think we as media, and from all over the world, Vikram has a group of people that he has so powerfully and eloquently brought together. I don't know how you've done this, Vikram, but he's brought so many people from all over together, and we have been able to have conversations and just discuss our views on different topics as mediators, and I guess just evolve as mediators from these different sessions.
Great.
So this particular session, this particular conference, each person was able to pick a topic and have a discussion on it.
Yeah, choose their own topic, not even pick a topic. Choose any topic that they want and just take it forward. And people just, there's no group. The group just keeps growing. So you'll see so many new people in this one. And of course, we have lots of different, now we have, of course, Portuguese and Spanish sessions also. So I just want everyone to come in wherever they are. Just the only thing what I want to do, I don't know whether, of course, we have 1 minute, Shelley. Let me just put up the topics that we have, if you don't mind. Although the schedule, of course, the link to the schedule is in the post, so you can have a look at it. But sometimes people don't read my messages also. There are some people I know, I send them the Zoom link and I get a message saying, where's the Zoom link? And it's only 2 messages above that message. I heard about that. I know about such people. I just, it does happen. Some of them might be here also, if you never know.
Vikram is pointing out at me.
She doesn't read my message. She sends a message, where's the Zoom link? 2 messages above that, she could have seen that.
I thought there might be something special for the panelists. So I just wanted to be doubly sure.
It's only panelists, always. Everyone else watches it on YouTube.
I know that.
I tell people that if you want to contribute, please come in. If you want to be a spectator, please watch it there. Okay, so we've done this. People, the heart of the mediation process, clarity, compassion, and curiosity, how to get comfortable with conflict, redefining mediation spaces, neutrality, polarization, and mediation. So the neutrality part, anyway, Bernie Mayer has been, I mean, we did that whole session, that whole symposium on neutrality. This one's interesting, building leadership consensus capacity to prevent unrest and social conflicts. And Luis Ore has been a lot of the events. Mediation in the refugee community, key to peacemaking, skill of ignorance, the mask I wear as a mediator, which was really interesting. Shelley's session, must watch. All of them are must watch. Shelley, let me put it out. All of them are must watch, but yours was really something that came from the heart. It was, and what you felt, what you've gone through. Then mediation and empathy. We had an interesting discussion on showing empathy, feeling empathy. So, and I was talking about, if it is about showing, it's programming people, let the machine do it. Let's just program the machines on that. May I have your attention, please? Motivation and mediation, changing the language of mediation, traditional culture and mediation, the judiciary, mediation, matrimonial disputes or a shield, rational versus irrational negotiation, marital mediation for a better adoption of the 2030 agenda. Then, of course, this one's in Spanish. Then artificial intelligence tools, collaborating globally for the advancement of mediation. We just did this on Spanish one in terms of schools. This is for the schools. The evolution of mediation, which is what, of course, we're doing. We've done that. DEIB. Then we have something in, this is mediation in small and medium enterprises. That's in Portuguese. And organizational mediator versus organizational ombuds. I really want to have that discussion because I feel that this is immediate work for mediators. Create that space for organizational mediators and not let it go into this larger ombuds thing and get lost somewhere in that. So I think this is something which is available in every organization as a mediator. Challenges of restorative justice and family matters, everyday heroes, identifying community mediators, education for peace. Okay, questions about questions. Michael Lang is always a pleasure meeting him. And when you talk about emotions, meet Michael Lang. He's a person with all the emotions that you would want to see. He's got that. Mediation as a theater should be interesting. And then forgiveness in mediation, community mediation, improving access to justice, emotions management in the mediation. Then again, this the same. What we're doing is that I've asked people to do the same session in Spanish also. So that emotion management is happening in Spanish also. Role of lawyers in mediation will happen in Spanish also. Then Alex has to give a topic. She's thinking about it. Trust and connection in mediation, intangible and tangible communication in mediation, time for a database of mediations, mindfulness in the mediation process, online mediation, peaceful leadership as a foundation for peer mediators, MEDA, all the questions related to it, and awaken your light, empower your practice, women in mediation, that you should be part of that also, women in mediation. And then use of empowering dispute resolution management processes, and of course, mediation for sustainable development goal 16, intercultural mediation, mediation government disputes, that's important. Michael Lang has to come up with that other topic that he's going to come up with. Labor disruption, workplace dispute, transformative dialogues. This is interesting. When he put tropical countries, I thought maybe he's got it wrong, but he has some thought on this tropical countries part of it. Mediators as transformation leaders, oxymorons is something we have to discuss, and some absurd terminology in mediation also, which we will discuss. But all of you have to be part of the closing session. We are going to, of course, discuss the moral mediation circle, that skill development project that I'm putting together, and the learnings and key takeaways. Thank you very much for giving me that much time to put it out there, because I feel that people these days don't have time to look at things like messages and schedules. There's not enough time for that for people. So yes, Shelly, let's take it forward. Diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and mediation. Yes.
Okay, so this one is important to me, and I'm glad that you did introduce this topic and ask me to discuss it, because I am a DEIB trainer. So it's one of the things that I teach as a professor at one of the universities. I'm a trainer for different companies, specifically for mediators with this. So it is something that I better know a lot about because it's what I do, in addition to mediations, of course, and a lot of other things. But DEIB, it's an acronym. It stands for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So diversity in mediation, it just involves having that mediator understanding all of the different cultures. You know, you have to have that cultural awareness part when you're walking into a mediation. I think that when, as a mediator, if we're unaware with ourselves and understanding that different cultures will be in front of us, it's an injustice to to those participants. The equity part is recognizing that those imbalances, you can have a lot of power imbalances. So as the mediator, we have to understand how to redistribute that power. Inclusion is understanding those thoughts and ideas and perspectives of all people who are participating in the mediation. And belonging is just having a space where we're able to have views, beliefs, and values of people respected. So in mediation, you know, we should practice that regardless, you know, in our everyday life. You know, but more specifically, since we're talking about mediators and mediations, we as mediators should be very mindful, because we deal with people of all cultures, you know, all types of people. Every mediation that we deal with is going to be something different, someone different, a different culture, you know. So these are topics, DEIB is a topic that is very important as far as I'm concerned for mediators. Your thoughts?
Yes, Samantha, Pooja, who wants to come in?
Well, I agree with you that somewhere the sense of belonging for the parties who are coming in the mediation would come if the mediator gives them that. The mediator, it's in the mediator's, technique to empower the parties to feel that, yes, I belong here. I should be sitting here And each and every participant has to feel that I am equally important. So there comes the inclusiveness of getting the people on the board and taking the opinion of everybody, whoever is involved, because it might be a small thought, but it can build up. As they say, brick by brick, you can build it up as a bridge to for dispute resolution instead of a wall. You have to break the wall, take the same bricks out of that wall and make it into a bridge for them. So the role of the mediator is of prime importance because every brick counts. So we have to give it to them that it is in your hands. So it is very important. And as I always say, the 5 fingers of our own hands are not of the same size. So they are diverse. But together as a hand, we have the power. But a single finger has no power. So we have to tell them, we have to mold people, motivate them that with your diversity, if you come together, you can do more. If it's a dispute resolution in a corporate matter, it not necessarily be meaning to just closure of that dispute. It can also be a built up of a further next level, maybe another contract, maybe something to whereby you can change this and add an addendum and build more. So there's so many things. Like I always say, mediation is like a role of an artist. You have to have it inside you. Training will only make you better. You cannot actually be a mediator if it is inherently not in your system to be one. If I am not patient and I say, why aren't they just understanding? Just move it, do it fast. No, I am not giving them that right to decide. I'm not empowering them enough. So for all these things to happen, where in the end, a sense of belonging comes that, yes, this is the best place where I could have been for my dispute resolution, a settlement will come on table. So that's my short take on it.
And Samantha's short take.
Yeah, I think
Vikram has been giving me lots of jibes, huh?
No.
First the jibe of the not reading enough. Is this how you treat your guests, Vikram?
I treat them worse. You haven't seen I treat them worse.
I would not come again then.
he really, really likes.
Where respect is not served on the table, it's time to move out.
I always like to push it through because through this way I'm communicating it to so many people. You can't imagine the messages I get. You can't imagine. And
I'm
when you
just
have
putting your leg, Vikram. Sometimes
I tell you.
ladies are here, you're the odd man out.
No, not a problem at all. But I'm saying there were 80 panelists in the last World Mediators Conference, 97 speakers in the symposium #1.
I know.
Now I have to answer such questions, and you can see the multiplier effect. 5 minutes on one gets multiplied into 80. That's 400 minutes on things which are already available to people.
So there you go. See, here we have a man who's so full of patience.
But he loses his sleep because of that. That's the worst part.
You chose it.
I know. Yes, Samantha, your short take on it.
Yes, I think these sorts of issues are really especially important for a mediator because a lot of times conflicts come out of cultural and communication differences between the parties that they just don't have the tools to overcome on their own. So it's really important for the mediators to be sensitive to these kinds of issues and to be able to recognize what people are actually saying, sometimes in spite of how they're saying it, to help people understand each other and see a way to move forward into a resolution.
So true. That's why I think language matters. It matters for the mediators and it matters for the people that are participating. So just like you said, it could be a conflict where it's just because the participants, they don't have the verbal tools to get past that conflict. So if you're doing a community mediation and it's just an argument just about something, it could be something so basic to us. But we have to be aware of the culture first and foremost. You know, you really do have to be aware of the culture because it could be something, stepping on a sneaker, you know, could be the conflict. And if and it's true, you know, I'm telling you, I'm from Baltimore, that's how it is. You could step on a sneaker and you know, and I mean, just the other day, it was another situation, and I think I spoke about this on another session with you, Vikram. It was a parking spot dispute, a community dispute, and a person was killed. Just, I think it was like 2 days ago, in a community where they say it's no violence. This first one was in Baltimore City. Well, the second one that just happened the other day was in Annapolis, and everyone's saying, well, this community is never violence and anything. Well, same scenario over a parking spot. But of course, it ended up in a killing. I think it was like 3 people killed, 3 people injured. But the thing is, that was a snowball effect. You know, it was a situation, more than likely, I'm just, you know, assuming at this point, that it was a situation where people had a dispute already going. It was something that could have been settled, you know, but you just needed to talk about it. And if we don't have those tools, if we don't walk in and understand how important our language is, it messes up the mediation, you know, it messes up the conversation. And I've had, I was hired one day, and the lady, she says to me, we want to have a discussion on, you know, understanding, you know, different cultures. And so I said, oh, okay, you know, no problem. And so we're going through the process. And she says, you know, these are hard topics. These are those hard conversations, Michelle. And I said, well, what makes it a hard conversation? You know, that word hard conversation, I guess it was a trigger kind of, you know, for me, because I'm like, what makes it hard? Is it hard to confront your biases, or is it hard to recognize, you know, your inability to accept other cultures, where you may lack cultural awareness or humility? So understanding where to place that word hard is, you know, it's not like I'm learning how to ride a bike for the first time and this is hard. I'm in having childbirth, that's hard. But having a conversation about respecting someone else's culture, you know, having that conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, that's hard to people. So,
I think some people say that it's hard because it makes them feel uncomfortable. Because they are a little out of their depth, maybe to, you know, to phrase what they're thinking in a way that they think won't trigger something in somebody else, or, you know, I mean, these discussions, I think that that's why people say that they're hard, because they're personally uncomfortable. And any time that they're uncomfortable like that, they're hopefully growing. So it's a good thing. But, you know, people get taught a lot to avoid those really, you know, difficult emotions like sadness and, you know, anger, all of these things that can actually be valuable tools, but to sit in the uncomfortable emotion and just kind of let it wash over you and learn about somebody else's experience can unfortunately be really hard for some people. And so I think they just want to avoid it rather than, you know, getting the positive encouragement of this is a good thing for you. You're going to come out on the other side better for having been through this uncomfortable moment.
And I think it's a difference between uncomfortable and hard. You know, I think it's, and I think that the word, the
terminology, the word hard is not required. It can be difficult, but not hard. It's like as a mediator, I myself, I'm a trainer. Just last week, I was training a group of masters in law and the final year students of a university in New Delhi. And I realized we cannot be using the language technically. See, as a trainer, I have just given away with the PPTs. The Gen Next is so good at it that they actually don't need PPTs. They can just Google it and see it. So I always go extempore, maybe have a flip chart where I can note the pointers. And you have to evolve. You cannot be speaking like, you know, a parrot and just speak whatever you have learned. You have to get them involved. So equally important is that if the parties are there and somewhere they're not opening up, we have to give them the space to vent out. The went out is the most difficult part of a mediation process. It's what people say hard. It's not hard, but it is also emotionally taxing sometimes. As a mediator, I feel very, when I hear something which is so wrong, which has happened to a party particularly, one goes back home with the burden of it. But with time, I have evolved as a person, as a mediator, and I just put it over there, and that's not my burden. I don't have to carry it home. So probably the person who's saying it is hard is carrying the burden onto herself or himself, so finds it hard. So I think time and experience also teaches them how to just put that on the side. That's not my burden to be carried.
So maybe it's not hard, it's heavy. You know, it's a heavy conversation.
Absolutely.
So wrong word, you know,
Yeah.
that's what it is. And I think that saying let's have a hard conversation, it's become a trend to say that, having hard conversations. So once one person has said it, you know, it just seems like let everybody say it, and it makes it seem acceptable. I want to be interested in hearing about what other cultures have gone through, and that makes this DEIB experience sound like I'm interested, but it's a part of that language. It's important, you know. Why does it matter? Because it's adding that hard part. It can be offensive. It makes it so it's offensive.
Very offensive.
I totally see that. And I think saying it's hard also kind of gives people a pass when they don't want to engage in it.
Yes.
The
Yes.
wall
You know,
already
it's so hard for me to do that. And I like your use of the term heavy. It's not hard, it's heavy, because that seems like something that, you know, okay, we might need to work together. We might need, you know, a couple extra hands, but that's something that we can all carry.
Exactly. And one of the things that, and I always have to go over the different stages of how hatred in a person, how it's built up. And you know, because this is an important part of why words matter. And as mediators, we have to think about the words that we use when we're talking to the participants, but also what we're hearing. That's that power and balance, the equity part of it, because we have to be able to recognize those demeaning words. Like if you're doing a community mediation and you have two people, you know, and one person, the label is that criminal. You know, a person is more than, always think about it as that person is a person first. You don't want to take away who they are as a person. You're not that criminal. You're not that Black man. When you say that Black man, yeah, I'm a Black man, but you're not that Black man. It's the emphasis on the word. You're taking away who they are and you're adding a negative tone to it. You don't want to say that scary woman, that aggressive. You know, people have said to me, I'm that aggressive woman. Well, when you tell a Black woman she's aggressive, then it becomes offensive. That's being called stupid. You know, you could have a divorce mediation and the husband could say, you know, she's crying all the time. Look at just being stupid, you know, and the wife says, you know, he just sleeps around, you know, he's just nasty. He's stupid. I don't want him with the kids. He's dumb. You know, he's evil. He's nasty. She's crazy. All of those type of words mean something. And we have to recognize those type of power imbalances, but also how it can affect the mediation, how it takes away that belonging within that mediation as well. And so some of the things that I keep in mind, I don't break it down in the mediation, but you have to dividing people, the classification, these are ways that people become dehumanized. So the first step is classification. That's when you divide people into them versus us. So we're taking them away from who we are and it's them, you know, and the symbolization, forcing people to wear or be associated with symbols which identify them as being different. discrimination, excluding groups from participating in civil society, such as excluding them from voting or certain places. And we see this a lot right now in community issues. I mean, it's happening every day.
I mean,
So,
we just saw the Supreme Court decision, you know, about
Alabama. So
please elaborate on that. We have to know what you're talking about.
So the United States Supreme Court, it was Alabama, I believe, recently ordered the legislature in Alabama to redraw the districts that they had put together, because each district gets to have a representative so that the people can band together and vote. But the way they had drawn the maps was they put the cities that are primarily Black into just 2 districts, so that they were, unfortunately, they would have a lot less voting power overall, despite making up, you know, a certain percentage. That percentage wasn't reflected in the actual political power that they would have based on how the districts were drawn. And so the United States Supreme Court said, you know, after it was challenged, said, you got to go back. You have to draw these so that they make sense.
But this is an issue you've been facing for a long time. It's not a new issue. This keeps coming up. Every new government comes in.
It keeps coming up. The Voting Rights Act, you know, was a really important piece of legislation, but it's been chipped away at over time, because everybody says, look, you know, since you enacted the Voting Rights Act, we got no problems, without thinking maybe it's the Voting Rights Act that's actually keeping it running the way they should be running. So, you know, they've been chipping away at it slowly in certain areas. And actually, this was a big win for diversity.
Let's just say hi to Rafaela. Hi, Rafaela.
Hi.
And that was
Hi, everybody.
Ask her, Rafaela, are you participating in the symposium, in the conference? You haven't fixed a session, have you?
Yeah, we test each other
But
last.
But have you fixed the session? You haven't fixed the session yet.
No, not for me. I'm just observing.
We don't like observers. We like participants.
Well, I can participate if you'd like to.
Yes, you must.
Yeah.
Spectators on YouTube, participants in the Zoom session. Very clear.
Yeah, I'd love to. I didn't want to
Good.
take other faces.
So
Thank
quickly,
you.
you want to introduce yourself to everyone? You want to do a little bit? Yeah.
Yes, I'm Raffaella Maria Pilari. I'm from Italy. I am a mediator and a founding partner of a mediation center here in Italy. I am also a conflict resolution specialist at FIO, United Nations, and I'm a trainer. I'm very interested into the new topic about the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging and mediation. That's the reason why I'm here with you, and I'm very curious about the topic and the discussion we can have about it. Thank you very much.
Nice to have you. Yes, nice to have you. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we won't get into the politics of the US right now. So that's an issue by itself. That's a whole issue by itself. So we keep that outside. But one interesting thing that I was, of course, speaking to Bernie Mayer in his session on neutrality, polarization, is that people talk about, I mean, I might be digressing, but talk about the US as a democracy, India as a democracy, the whole structure that has been created where only 33% of the entire votes of the country and you become the president of the United States, 25% of the votes of the country we get in India, you can become the prime minister. So are we really democracies? Because that creates the issue where you create that vote bank politics and getting people together, dividing people into that arithmetic issue. Okay, I get 12% here, I get 20% there, I'm done. I don't need to take everyone into account. So I don't know whether that fits into this discussion, but I'm just saying that we have to look at these things from politics part of it, from really not fooling ourselves that we are democracies. And definitely US is not the oldest democracy, because if slave owners and property owners are the ones who decide, who are the ones who vote, then I don't think that can be called a democracy. So I think people are just fooling themselves. Why did I get into this discussion? Samantha, you got me into it. You spoke about the politics part of it.
Political systems across the world could be another discussion entirely, but this came up because of the recent Supreme Court decision, which was a big win for diversity, which is which is essentially what this particular discussion is all about. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it was supporting what Shelley was saying.
Mm-hmm. And it literally just happened. So I think it was this week or at the end of last week. So it literally just happened. So that was important. So then we have the dehumanization part, and that's where you deny the humanity of one group to associate them with as animals or disease in order to belittle them. Now, if we just think about the COVID time, how people was put against like China, and just the words, it was ridiculous, just how it was meant. Things were said to separate. It was meant to take one group of people and have them looked at as the cause. They're the diseased ones. They're the root of this issue. And this was just part of the steps to remove other people from looking at them as being, human almost, just think. So if we are walking into a mediation, suppose if we had a mediation with China, the United States, it could have been a great mediation, and we're automatically going to look at them as if they are the bad guys, and it's not fair. It's how the brain is being programmed. This is all part of programming the brain. And that's why I just always try to say to myself, don't pay attention to those biases, those implicit and explicit biases. You got to say to yourself, this is what you're walking into. You have to be culturally aware of what is programming you to think and behave the way you do. Because mediators, we have to be it's like you have to be sharp with every step and everything that you're thinking about, especially when, I'm sorry to have to say this N word, but especially when we're calling ourselves neutral, Vikram. But if we're going to say, how are we going to, and when I'm saying neutral, I'm saying that also in a manner where we're being fair to other people, not only as just take away, well, as a mediator, we have to be neutral. I'm looking at it as treating people fairly, treating them, giving them that equal part that they deserve as humans. Okay, is that okay?
That's okay. It's as simple as, Shelley, just be yourself. Everything falls into place. Anything else that you think about will go into the wrong direction.
When prejudices which are there in the mind find their way, and you blurt out, that's the most damaging thing, because we all have our own set of prejudices. Like if I were to say I don't have, I'd be lying to my own self.
Exactly.
We all have our prejudices, but we have to overcome it and not start there are parties sitting in front of me, and there is India has got a diverse community, and we are all living together. The only country in the world which I would say has so many languages, so many different religions, and this particularly, maybe there is somebody I do not appreciate. My biggest fault would be to blurt it out. I have to internalize, I have to focus, and if I'm not able to, it is my duty as a mediator to recuse myself.
But
it is not my job that I knowingly, being prejudiced, having a bias in my mind, sit on the table, pretending to solve their matter, pretending that I'm trying to, take you on the path of resolution, whereas already I have my set of biases in place. And during the course, I will start speaking which will take away the sense of belonging, the sense of DIB, absolutely. And that'll be the end of the people's faith in the process. So
Mhm.
I have to internalize, I have to be true to myself, as Vikram rightly said. All you have to do is accept yourself for what you are and then move ahead. So I agree with him wholeheartedly on this, that I
Mhm.
can fool you, I can fool the world. But the day I look into the mirror and start lying to my own self, that's a case of self-destruction besides other things.
But
But
interestingly,
I,
Pooja, Pooja spoke about the diversity in India. Interestingly, the polarization that is there in the US, we don't even come. I mean, we can't even understand the situation there. When
Absolutely.
Shelley, watch Shelley's session and the way she says how, as a black woman, the way she is being
I
treated. It's,
I know
I mean, just to hear that sounds like we can't even relate to it.
more than 80% of my family is settled in Toronto and US in Fremont, California. So I'm very much aware the biases are there, even if we pretend they're not. The very word black is it speaks of racism, it speaks of derogatory attitude. Why are you addressing somebody with the color of the skin? She's just a woman. What is the need for the terminology black woman? She's a
But
woman. That's it.
but I'm on the reverse. What I've done is that there was someone who said, she spoke about herself as the white woman. And
Mhm.
I said, this is not a person I can have. What are you trying to say? Are you showing a supremacy of some kind by saying I'm a white woman? Why does it even come up in a discussion? And I felt, after that, I've been saying all throughout, I do not want any supremacist. Color, language, nationality, qualifications. In any case, we don't want any, at least for me, the Mediator mindset, you cannot have these kind of supremacist attitudes. So by even saying that, you have, in a way, on the other side, shown that aspect of yourself, which is for me an issue.
True.
but I do think, I think it's important, obviously for mediators to be themselves, but I think we also can always work on bettering ourselves and challenging those implicit biases that we all have. And, certainly if you have explicit biases, you should be working on challenging them. And look, if there's something that you're just not in a place where you can overcome, I agree with Pooja, you can recuse yourself and say that you're not the right mediator for a particular situation. But I think it is really important to always be looking at yourself and seeing if you are looking at something through the lens of a bias to see, is this something I need to work on? Is this something that I need to overcome? Not thinking that anybody is ever going to get to a place where they have none. It's too high of an ideal, I think, for any human being to achieve, but we can
Utopia.
always growing.
No, but Samantha, the concept is the concept of the concept of evolution of a mediator, which is one of my series, is the aspect of that reflective process at all points of time. It's a on a moment to moment basis, just to not even talk about it as at the end of a process. Is you're doing it all the time, and so that's the important part. So I think that also comes with that mediator mindset, that you're willing to evolve, you are reflecting at all points of time.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I think every person I've ever met who really has a mediator mindset are some of the most self-reflective people that I have ever talked to. And I think that is what draws them to the role of mediator, rather than just being participants in mediation, because they want to help people challenge their own thoughts about themselves. They want to, and because it's something that they just so naturally do on an everyday basis.
So let me tell you that we are going to have reflective practice groups as part of the World Mediation Circle. And Michael Lang is someone who's known for reflective practice. He's going to be part of that. So we're putting that in place. So please be part of those groups. It'll be a good thing to have those discussions.
No, but if I were to come in, don't you feel like as ever since you've started doing mediations and being active practitioners, don't you feel that you have changed internally? You have become more patient with your own family, your friends. I mean, in arguments, earlier on, I would start arguing something small just to make a point. Like, no, I am in the right. I have to hammer it home. I have to make a point. Now I feel, no, it's not okay. I've just said what I had to, and I'll just leave it at that. There is no need now left to hammer it down, because I feel It's not important. If they're not going to understand, so be it. So I have also become patient with my own relations, vis-a-vis family, friends, and I feel that that change has actually worked. Only the T is missing. Otherwise, mediation is like almost akin to meditation, because
And
it
so
also changes us internally.
that's so funny because my youngest son, he tells me, where is my mommy at? You know, he says, I need the old Shelley back. You are just too emotional now. And I'm just like you should really appreciate this person. And I think like last week, my oldest son, we maybe were text messaging or talking on the phone, but one or the other, but he says, man, mommy, you're a lot more patient now. And so, and I like that they're able to see that difference in me, especially my oldest son, you know, to see a difference where they've seen me, you know, go from an explosive person, you know, just unable to control my own temper. So I'm coming from the perspective of understanding. I had the tools in my head where I wanted to be able to solve the conflict. I knew in my heart that I really wanted to solve the conflict, but I didn't have the total understanding, and I think the support on the means to get to that step, that next step of solving conflict. You know, I guess it was a step where, you know, one person is saying, and I come from a religious background too, so and I know the rights and the wrongs, but one side is saying, it's kind of like the monkey on your back, the good and the bad, saying, Shelley, you know, talk it out, you know, this is right. And the other side is saying, did you win the fight? You know, that's how you solve the conflict. But you also, I would always look at how I felt in the inside. And my kids appreciate, well, the youngest one, he does it so much. I think he does, but you know, he'll understand as he grows. But it's appreciated in the world of mediation. I think the people that I work with, whether it's the conflicts that I resolve or the people that I talk to, you know, and help with understanding this world of mediation and the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging part, they understand where I'm coming from. So especially when you're able to look at it from the perspective of the people that you're helping, when you're in their shoes, and then you're able to look at it and move from the perspective of a mediator, it's a different set of shoes that you're walking in. I have muddy shoes and clean shoes, you know, so it's just a different set of shoes.
But can we talk about DEIB now? Remove the aspect of color and all those things. Let's just look at it without all that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in a mediation from some other perspective, say the thoughts perspective, from the ideas perspective, anything else. Can we do that? Because normally all these terms obviously get related to color and all those kinds of things, but say different thought process, diversity of thought process. Let's look at that. Doing something that I'm just trying to pick up something which might get interesting, and Samantha definitely has something to say. Yes, Samantha.
I mean, I think that is certainly something, you know, like there are definitely times when, for example, I talk to my husband and, you know, we both wind up talking through our thought processes, you know, if we're in a disagreement about something of how we got to where we are. And sometimes I just look at him and I think, I have no idea why your brain works that way. But, you know, it's important to understand that sometimes somebody took a completely different path, right, to get to where you are sitting currently, and to try to at least see where they're coming from. You know, just as mediators, that's literally our job, right? Is to try to see where people are coming from so that we can bring that understanding to the other party that they're having a disagreement with. Because, you know, you're going to talk to people in mediations and have absolutely no idea how their brain works the way that it does, because it's going to be completely different from your own. But to try to listen to it without judging, why does your brain work that way? And instead being curious of, you know, why did we get to this place? How did this happen? you know, and just kind of even changing the intonation of how you're asking the question in your own mind of, you know, why did you get to that place, right? How did you get to that place?
Yeah, and I think that's because our brains, we have a natural tendency to look for patterns, you know, behavioral models or the psychodynamic experiences or cultural conditionings. It's just how those implicit biases are influenced.
True.
So when you're a mediator and you have those things that are just innate, it's just naturally in your brain. It could just be something as far as like how media portrays something. It's so hard to make sure that you are walking into mediation being culturally aware and not showing these biases. But we have to recognize how the biases affect our personal and professional lives, you know, within the mediation, of course, because I don't want to I don't want my personal, I don't want my biases to come into a mediation and affect the people, or, you know, I don't want, that's the one thing I'm really against that. I don't want to make the conflict worse than what it is. And I'm like, Pooja, I will walk away before I do anything. You have to understand when to say no. And I think the most important thing is to recognize your own biases and saying, yes, I do have biases. We understand what ethnocentrism is and say, okay, this is how we recognize it. You recognize it first and then you work through it. Because if you don't, then, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michelle. Absolutely. We have to recognize that there is an elephant in the room. And see, on the first day, the parties are coming with their own set of biases, and I have my own inherent inbuilt prejudices, which are there. I'm a human being. I'm not AI that I can do tuck, 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 and I get to the point. So I am myself an emotional person. I would be having my own set of prejudices, which are there, which I'm trying to overcome and working upon. But then when you recognize that a stage has come where it's not heading anywhere, and maybe somewhere as a mediator, one needs to recognize that, yes, I am not able to overcome my own prejudice. So I have to recognize that, and I have to be true to my own self. So that thing has to happen naturally, and I would walk out, as like you said, I would just say, though I can work on it for the next time, but not on that current scenario where I am. So my evolution and my evolving as a person is to recognize and then work upon myself so that the next time it shouldn't happen. But for that particular case, I would recuse myself.
Mm-hmm.
What we have is, we have some comment from Erin, although I have sent her the link, hopefully she comes in. So she's saying, yes, there are so many different kinds of biases that we face. And because the thing is that when someone is commenting on LinkedIn, there is actually a delay in the transmission. So it's not going to come in when you say it. But one comment of hers is, it helped me to face my trauma, which aids me in helping others through theirs. It was so hard to be in conflict for me before. Now I face it with such a different face and heart, which I'm sure all of you relate to, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. Yes, Shelly, why is there a silence here? You're the ones there is so much that you have to tell us, and then there is silence. How can there be silence?
Because I can run my mouth so much. And I'm not sitting here alone. I want to make sure that everybody else
Gets an
the
opportunity.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't want to take up everybody's, the space is open for everybody.
Okay, look, Rafaela hasn't come in. So
Yeah,
Rafaela,
That's an important skill as a mediator too.
There was a school teacher, and she used to say, Pooja Anand, do you have verbal diarrhea? Like, you can go on and on.
And I'm looking at each box, and I'm trying to read everybody's facial expressions.
Okay, we have to give, Erin is here. We have to give her a chance to speak. Please. Also, because she was commenting, so she is passionate about the topic. And definitely she'll have some interesting thing. Now imagine so much silence waiting for someone to come. Erin, we're all waiting for you to give us those words of wisdom. Please. But if you unmute, it'll be helpful, but we'll otherwise lip read. We have no problem.
Good morning. How are you? It's so
Good.
nice to see you all.
You'll have to do a quick introduction of yourself, and let's then get into the topic.
My name is Erin Moynihan, and I am a conflict resolution specialist. I've been working with people who have developmental disabilities for many, many years as their advocate for the past 6 or 7 years. And I just recently opened my own business called Courageous Engagement, and I went to school with Michelle. Hi, Michelle. I'm really excited to be listening and part of these conversations because I feel like I've been a mediator for most of my life. I started out as a peer mediator as a child, and I kind of just moved through the motions of being a mediator without realizing it my entire life. And I feel like a lot of us who do that start very young and learn those skills very young and help ourselves along our life path. But as you guys were saying earlier, going through conflict resolution has really changed the way I handle conflict myself within my own family unit, within my friends, within my community. I'm very, very good at helping other people through their conflicts, but due to trauma and things that I went through as, you know, as a human, I have a very difficult time standing up for myself and handling conflict for myself. And as a mediator, I have learned how to help myself. And I really want to help other people who suffer through conflict learn how to stand up for themselves and how to walk through that conflict without, making it worse.
But Erin, tell me, there's a series of mine called Evolution of a Mediator. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, please watch it. The whole idea started by all these things that I do. That was the first show that I started. The concept was this, that you have certain a certain seed in you, and you evolve as you go along. So your value system that you've brought up in, your circumstances, your experiences, all those add up to what you are in the present, and you keep evolving, which we were just talking about, on a moment-to-moment basis. So, and that it's all about the mediator mindset and evolution of that. And the other thing is, why are you not participating in the conference? Why you want to be a spectator and put your comments on the chat? There was another session also you were doing that.
I would love to be. I just my children just got out of school, so I'm also a single mom, and I have 3 kids, so I'm trying to juggle that as well.
They can be involved in the conference also. More the merrier. Yeah. You cannot, I mean, imagine those children know everything about mediation. It's just asking them the right questions. They know everything about it. The mediator mindset is the mediator mindset. It's not the age factor to it. So let's get them involved also. So yeah. So was there a further comment you were going to make on the DEIB aspect of it?
Well, I just really feel like, especially for those who have developmental disabilities or who are disabled, because I am physically disabled as well. There's a different mindset when you walk into supporting someone through a conflict who has those disabilities. And a lot of things that we face are the biases internally of, this person looks different from us, they must be different from us. And it's very apparent through the conversations as a mediator that those internal biases very much direct the way the conversation goes. And a lot of the time I feel like I'm having to say to other people, just because this person doesn't look like they understand doesn't mean that they're not understanding. Just because they're not understanding it in a way that you are saying it does not mean that they have an inability to fully understand. And those biases are really tough because like, especially with a parent dynamic, parent-child, adult-dependent child dynamic, it's really difficult to break through those biases that are so inherent of like, this person's not going to understand, or this person's not going to be able to go through a conflict and stand up for themselves, or say what they need to be, or say what needs to be said, and or just doesn't understand. That's one of the things that we face a lot, is this person just doesn't understand and won't understand and will never be able to understand. And so helping people realize, you know, maybe they can understand if we talk in a different manner, if we use different words, if maybe we change the environment in the room, because maybe the environment in the room is causing anxiety, or there's too many things for them, for distractions. I keep going back to this whole person approach to mediation, where, especially in my area, and I don't know about you guys, but in my area, there's a lot of trauma and a lot of developmental disabilities. And it's familial trauma that just has been generational in our area. And so breaking through those conversations and really helping people to understand that just because this person is different from, you know, the normal person, doesn't mean they're not going to be able to stand up for themselves and walk through this conflict with you.
But
I wanted to
just a little bit of a protocol thing. This is my living room. So Daryl has come into the living room. We all have to say hi to him, and then we continue the conversation. We might be on a Zoom session, and we might have lost that basic protocol, but here we don't lose it. And Michael Lang always says this is like your living room. So hi, Daryl.
Yeah.
Hello.
That is a childhood friend of Shelley, and of course he was going to come in earlier, I thought, but yes, he's here now. So yeah, so Erin is telling us something very interesting. Yes, we'll get you in after that. Yeah, Erin.
So anyways, I'm just saying that it's very challenging trying to work through that mindset, especially when adult dependents are looking for independence. You know, especially if the parent has had like a grip on the adult dependent for their entire life, and, you know, has paperwork that is conservatorships, and you know, this person is an adult person who's saying, I really just want to be on my own. I have a lot of those conversations, and the biases that come with that are, they're very difficult. I'll follow the person I'm supporting around town, and just kind of, because it's a small town, I can see everything that goes on. And I have watched people I work with be treated like they are, you know, less than human, or very small children, especially through like banking processes or going to the grocery store, those kinds of things. So I help in my area, just kind of bridging the gap between bias and conflict between, you know, community members and people who have developmental disabilities, especially.
But tell me something, is it called a brotherhood or a sisterhood, whatever it's called? How come we have all these people from Pepperdine background? Erin also has done a master's from Pepperdine. What is happening here? What's this all about? Is some groupism kind of thing happening on me? Are you trying to make me feel inferior or something?
I brought everybody together from Pepperdine. Maybe it was me. I do not know.
Okay, so now what Daryl has to do is Daryl has to tell us about himself, and then Daryl, you get into the conversation also. So please, Daryl.
Well, my name is Daryl D'Souza. I was born and raised in Jamaica, Queens, New York. Grew up there with a healthy family, 5 siblings, 2 parents. I'm very blessed for that experience. I know that there are challenges now with a younger generation and some of the challenges that we are seeing, but we still have to show some respect and kind of guide them, because they don't, I feel as they aren't as fortunate as we were in our generation. And looking at some of the people on the call, I apologize because I'm a little bit older, so I'm referring to the generation younger than you. But I went to school in Baltimore. When I was 18, I left New York, went to school in Baltimore. and attended Morgan State University, and I graduated from there. And I ended up joining the police department in December 14th of 1988. It was a childhood dream of mine. And then when I was on the job, I was fortunate enough to be there for 30 years. And I worked in very challenging neighborhoods all 30 years. And some of the disparities and some of the things that I, witnessed firsthand, some of my experiences, lives with me for a lifetime. And they say that working in the streets in Baltimore as a police officer, it's 3 times that. So although I did 30 years, you can almost say I did 90 years there because of the experiences and just the places, the great people, the calls for service. And I was very fortunate also to have gone through every single rank. So I went through all the ranks in the police department, and my last rank was the police commissioner. So I was the chief for a little while. I was very fortunate, but I'm retired now. I do a lot of writing. I still do a lot of community work. I've known Shelley for years. We've always had healthy conversations about policing. And I told her that once you leave policing, you kind of get deprogrammed. And if you tell a police officer that now, he won't believe you. But when you're doing policing, you're literally programmed a certain way in what you have learned and what some of your experiences are, despite the fact of growing up in a healthy environment, like I did in New York. But it was a battle. But it's definitely a programming issue. And one of the biggest challenges is culture, dealing with other cultures and diversity, not just what we see on the streets, but the diversity within. And I think that in order to fix policing now, you have to fix it within first. You have to fix it internally to get ahead. So that's a little bit about myself.
So interesting.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're going to take you through your mindset, because being in the police and how does that change your mindset might be not the topic that we're discussing here, but I find that really interesting. So we are going to, at least I'm going to get into that part, but Pooja wants to leave. So she's just going to give us a little concluding part of her thought on the topic and the session. Yes, Pooja.
Thank you so much. It was lovely meeting all of you all here, and thanks to Vikram for giving me the opportunity of choosing the topic and finding my Pepperdine friends here, all of us. So as I end, I say that we are diverse, but then we are united and we belong here. So these are my thoughts, and Vikram has been the cementing factor who's brought us all on board. So one person can also change it all. So he has shown that where there is a will to get inclusiveness of various people, like he's getting people on board from all across the globe. So there it speaks. The actions speak louder than words, and we're all here. So
before you leave, because I keep talking about it, everyone hears it, but the aspect of heart, soul, spirituality, and I say that this is the kind of mediation I want to promote. And when you're connecting at that level, I'm telling you, there is no difference between people. There is nothing. But if you can connect there, and you just have to get there, and that's all that's required. After that, everything else is just very frivolous. Everything else.
Yeah, the skeleton inside is the same, and the blood groups are the same. And everything else is just exterior.
Yeah, and this might sound like one of those kind of nice things to say, but actually, if I'm telling you, you get to doing it, it's really very nice. Yeah, so thank you, Pooja. Please, you're joining some other sessions also. You said you joined some other sessions.
Definitely, I will. Thank you so much. Apologies, I have to leave because there's somebody already at the door and there is another commitment. Yeah. So thank you.
You'll be treated well. You'll be treated well. Don't worry about it. Okay?
No. I know that. that was my return joke. So thank you. Sorry, Daryl, I have to leave. Sorry, Erin, and sorry, Rafael. I hope I pronounce your names correctly. Bye.
Yeah, that's fine.
Bye, Michelle, and bye, Samantha. Bye, Vikram. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Daryl, Erin, and Rafaela maybe don't know the joke that Pooja was putting at. The thing is that she asked me for the Zoom link. 2 messages above that message was a Zoom link. And I keep telling people, no one reads what I put out there. No one reads my posts. No one reads my messages also. So I had to put it to her. So that, yeah. So I mean, look, that this part of it, I don't know if we have to get into now, because Shelley definitely has the topic and she wants to take it, but I'm going to take Daryl through that mindset thing. But I'm just trying to figure out, like you said, comes from a certain stable family, and then you get into policing. There is a certain expectation from you. And I still like to use that term that this is a colonizer's police. It's the colonizer structure that has been created, the colonizers' rules and everything. And that's continued in every country. I mean, that's the way you had to put it together. So to get into a colonizer's police and that mindset that is required from you, that in a way you are implementing things against people whom you can connect to, but then you should not connect to. I don't know how it works, how you are conditioned. So if you want to give us a little bit of something on that, Daryl?
So it was very challenging for me and a lot of African American men or people of color to have to come into a institution, law enforcement institution, and enforce laws that after you do a lot of research, and if you're very familiar with it, some of the laws that really had a disparate treatment on disenfranchised communities. So it was very difficult trying to come in and do policing in those communities, because you for the most part, people are seeing one side of a story, and folks that we were policing against, they have their own story. You know, they say there's 3 sides to every story: your side, the other person's story, and the truth. But even if you take 2 of the 3, that weighs in the advantage of the person that you're policing against, right? So your story, you should really look at the other 2, right? If that makes any sense. But that was a challenge for us because a lot of times we just really over-policed on some issues that could have been addressed a different way. And I'll give you an example, is the heroin epidemic that started in the 60s and the 70s. And it still continues in Baltimore and a lot of cities. In the 60s and 70s, it kind of lasted even until today's date. But we over-policed, you know. In the 80s, there was this war on drugs. And when you talk about a war, I mean, you're talking about 2 combatants, right? You're talking about 2 governments, in theory, that have 2 different beliefs on something. Well, I mean, if you take a look at the heroin epidemic, was there ever any type of consideration or any type of communication with the other side in terms of how things should be policed, you know, in terms of the heroin epidemic? So I say all that to say is that if you look at today, the same example is that this heroin, this opiate epidemic is treated more now like a health crisis. And why didn't we do that, you know, in the 70s and the 80s and 90s? And it had so much of collateral damage to this day with kids and, you know, their grandkids and so forth, that it just really put, in my opinion, some of the people we policed against still in a situation where they're still fighting to get out of it. So.
But at this point of time, Daryl, I'll have to get Samantha in because she just might go off to sleep. So Samantha, yes.
No, I was thinking, you know, it's funny how, you know, when Daryl was talking about.
Let me just clarify to Daryl, not because what you were saying. In general, she was a little sleepy, and I wanted her to come in. Yes, Samantha.
When Daryl was talking about, you know, being part of the police department, and, you know, the police departments typically do have a certain way of thinking. I know several reformed police officers, as I call them, you know, but it's funny how, you know, as you go through different things in your life, you can pick up more biases, you know, even as you may ultimately have a goal of getting rid of some of them. you know, and listening to Erin talk about working with, you know, mentally or physically disabled people, you know, I think that's also an aspect of diversity that does sometimes get overlooked. When Shelley earlier was talking about, you know, people beginning their journey of hate, right, by being reductive of people to certain traits. And one thing that I kept thinking was, you know, when I worked at the public defender's office, we had a policy where we were not to refer to our mental health court clients as, you know, this autistic person. It's this person with autism. And I always thought that was a really wonderful way to, you know, show by using your language that you can't reduce people to their one thing that makes them different than you. And so, you know, there's just lots of different ways to take the experiences that other people have and sort of integrate them into your own life to try to challenge your biases, to work to overcome them, to allow more diversity into your life and to be a welcoming person that makes other people feel as though they belong. So I really appreciate all of you being here and sharing your perspectives.
But let me tell you, Samantha, last conference last year, we had a session on neurodiversity and mediation. So please watch that, because there was Bertha, she's in Netherlands, and she is autistic, and she spoke about her experience and everything. So it was a nice session. Please watch it if you can.
I would love to watch that. I think neurodivergence is an aspect of diversity that gets overlooked, you know, especially when we were talking about why does your brain work that way? There might be a reason. If it's because there's some kind of neurodivergence, and you have to just work within that and understand it to be able to work with it.
Erin is coming in, but also let me tell you just one second, Erin, let me just tell people that whenever you want to search a topic in YouTube, just go type Mediator Vikram and put the topic. Chances are I would have discussed it somewhere or the other. Yes, Erin.
Just a quick example of what Samantha is saying. I went to Social Security this last week with a client who has dual diagnosis of autism, and he has mental health concerns as well. And we have been fighting Social Security for about 4 months now. His Social Security was taken away for reasons of he has a job. It's a long story. But while he was talking to the Social Security representative, and we had produced a very long list of accommodations that he has in his job, the Social Security representative, when he was talking to my client, said, "Oh, yes, and your job." Okay. And he didn't mean anything by that. What he was trying to say was, with all of these accommodations and, you know, the fact that we are considering this a job, we need to da 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 da. And he was not meaning to be disrespectful. He was not meaning to be you know, talking down to my client, but my client became very upset. And it was a very difficult conversation to have with the person who worked at Social Security. But I can tell you, at the end of that conversation, the man who worked at Social Security learned a very hard lesson, and he probably will not be doing that again. And it's just that the words we choose, our body actions, our voice, everything, that our eyes, the way we talk, look, everything matters, especially to someone who has developmental disabilities.
But you want to sensitize people in relation to physical disability and mediation? Is there something that you want to put across there?
I want to help people understand that just because someone has a developmental, mental, or physical disability does not render them incapable of conflict resolution, incapable of going through the mediation process, or incapable of just humaning like everyone else.
Good. I think we need
You
this
don't
little
take away
clip.
their options.
This little clip has to be put out there. It's really important to put it out there. Yeah. I mean, this is something should be basically understood by people, but to even have to tell them this is a little.
It's hard sometimes, but those internal biases that are there are just so strong that we don't even consider them until we're faced with them. And then we go, oh my gosh.
No, I think that's something which as a society, maybe that sensitization of these basic things we moved away from for whatever reason. That'll be another discussion by itself. But Rafaela has to come in. Rafaela, please.
Just a quick note, because and Erin was telling us about this story. It just came to my mind that last month I was attending a conference held by an association for deaf and dumb people. So deaf and dumb people, sometimes we don't even know, because it's not a visible disability, and not necessarily totally deaf, for example, but it's still a disability. And it was very moving during this conference. There was a show, a small show with a deaf and dumb person who was pretending to, because there was a show, was pretending to try to do something that she couldn't do because of her disability. And her parents tried to help actually doing it instead of. And he was crying, pretending, of course, to cry, because the need is not to be substituted. The need is to be understood, helped. So when we talk about DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongings, I think I'm not an expert. That's why I'm very curious, because it's a new trend. It's different from who worked with a special area like Erin. She worked with people with disabilities, so she's focused on it. But as mediators or ombuds or conflict resolution specialists, you're not actually focused necessarily on that. So the question is, when we talk about DEIB and mediation, is mediation a tool, or maybe both, a tool to deal with all these issues and accomplish the goal of DEIB, or there is a chance to go the other way around and say that DEIB instruments and skills and so forth can be used in the mediation process as an additional tool to create, for example, a safe mediation room where all the needs of all diverse people are heard, understood, and creating a safe place through awareness of biases of each other, of the mediator, him, herself. So it'd be nice to for people like me who's not specialized in DEIB tools to improve and to have an evolution as a mediator using also these process or these skills, right, in general.
I think that sensitization has to happen, and then what Erin is going to do is Erin is going to have a special session in the conference on this aspect. Erin, please schedule a session and sensitize people.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah, and only thing is Shelley has been left out of the conversation for some
no,
reason.
I haven't. I'm listening and taking it all in and putting it all together with the topic, because all in all, it has to do with just having mercy and compassion on all types of people. It's just everybody, whether it's people with disabilities, whether it's people like Daryl discussed within the inner city community members, whether it's people like Samantha is discussing within the court system, whether the victimizers, it's anybody that we're dealing with when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We have to allow a sense of understanding as a mediator to enter. And so when Rafaela said, does mediation have a place? It does. Wherever there's a space for conflict resolution. Wherever there's a conflict, there's a space for resolution. Look at it that way. That's what I mean to say. If there's a conflict, there's a space for resolution. I don't look for the court system to intervene with every type of, with every conflict, because I just find it just creates a way to stick a label on a person, and it takes away their ability to belong in this world as a human being. It sticks a label on them, and it creates an environment where equity is lost. They don't belong, and there's a power imbalance. That's where, you know, people like in law enforcement, like with Daryl, where he said that the things that he's seen in the streets is something that is 3 times, you know, he's been 30 years, but it's 90 plus really, considering the streets of Baltimore. But also just think about, like, for him, he walked in, you know, from New York, and it probably had heard about these people in Baltimore are X way. And like with Erin, the people that she's dealing with, their stigmas attached to that. So the people that she's talking to in Social Security, they're saying to themselves, these people are X way. They're taking away their belonging. So whereas this guy said that job, you know, you may feel as though his intentions wasn't to be malicious or whatever, but it's intent versus impact. If the impact was more powerful than the intent, then we have created a conflict, because that impact was powerful enough to create a conflict. And that's where that mediator and you saw something and was able to resolve that something. And same thing with Samantha, when you worked in that field in the court system, where you saw something that was done wrong and you were able to do something, it was already in you. And with Daryl in law enforcement, yeah, you were programmed in that field because that's what you were into at that moment. But whether it took you 30 years to become desensitized or to change your programming, you're deprogrammed now. And it just took time for you to see that Baltimore was stigmatized and stereotyped, you know, and had so many biases connected to it. So you walked in and you saw what was portrayed to be X way. And I think that that's one of the things where that's how compassion and empathy can be lost. And that's how diversity, it leaves a person within that cultural awareness. It can leave a person when they're doing their profession. That equity part can leave. That's where you have that power imbalance. It can leave a person. That inclusion, it can leave, and that belonging can leave. So with Daryl, I wanted to bring him into this session so he could talk about and just shed light on that compassion part and how that empathy part did come into him. And you could see the world from one perspective, you know, as far as his job was to enforce the law. You know, and I remember at Paradigm, the one thing, you know, everybody, we always hear a law enforcement, a police officer, they're there to protect the serve, you know, but that's a slogan. And the slogan is not the job per se, because it turns into who are you protecting and serving? If the people who are officers end up being the ones who take away or do not have that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging within them. So who are you protecting and serving if that slogan is supposed to be the way you walk, you know what I'm saying, into a situation? But and it's understandable how, like we were discussing, implicit biases, it comes into play and how it affects our professional life and personal life. but we also understand how we have grown and evolved as people. I know that you've seen how I've grown and evolved as a person. I'm not the same Shelley as I was when you met me when I was 20, although I'm like 25 now, but it's just, we just grow and we have evolved as people and in our personal life and in our professional life. So what have you seen? And I guess let's just look at for yourself, because to me, I look at you as a peacemaker now. I look at a law enforcement is supposed to be, in my mind, how I envision in the perfect Shelley's world, law enforcement should be a peacemaker position. I don't want to see law enforcement just locking people up. That's just an easy way out of things, because law enforcement, for me, I want you to be able to contribute to the world of peace and understand why certain behaviors are occurring. And these are topics that, of course, you and I discuss, all the time. But what are some things that you think that you have come to realize as far as how you've put empathy and mercy and compassion into your mind now, as opposed to, I know that you've had it before, but how has it developed, I guess I should say, in your mind and in your heart now, as opposed to before?
Yeah, that's a good question, Shelley. And before I forget, I really want to ask the group this question, because I've been toying with someone giving me an answer, right or wrong, but direction. And the question is, can you teach an organization like law enforcement, whether they're trainees coming in 20 years, 21, 22 years old, coming from all parts of the country to work in a predominantly Black community, or taking that same situation where you have police that come back every year for in-service training once a year, and they've been on the job 10 years or 12 years. Can you teach them implicit bias? In other words, if I grew up in a rural area, if I grew up, in New York and the culture in Baltimore was different, can you teach me implicit bias, and will it stick with me? So I had that question. Whoever wants to take a dive at it, I'd love to hear it, because I really haven't gotten the answer in the last 20 years on that question. And then I can jump into it.
Yes.
I can jump into it. Shelley is.
Erin already has the answer for you. You don't have to worry. Answers are coming out. Erin has the answer. Yes, Erin, you have the answer.
Yeah.
Example of what you're trying to say. So along the lines of what I'm already doing, I'm working with law enforcement to try and help them understand that people that they approach in the community may not have the capacity mentally to understand, asked to do or asked not to do. And a couple of people that I've worked with have had, their bodies slammed on the ground, their face put in the ground, yelling at them, screaming at them. And all of these things for someone who has a developmental disability is very difficult, and they're not going to comply. They truly are struggling with the understanding of what's being asked of them. So I'm going to law enforcement and saying, hey, we need to talk about this bias that we have internally on, approaching people who have, a difference in the way that they're handling themselves. They may not be on drugs. They may not be drunk. They may not be, they may be completely mentally incapable of having a conversation or being asked to do anything that they're being asked to do. So when I go in, we talk about how it's really important that when you come to a person who is struggling and maybe acting erratically, to come in with a calm voice, to come in with a calm body posture, to come in with certain words, to not touch right away, to maybe test the waters. If I come in to touch you, are you going to immediately drag your body away? And what does that mean to the person? Now, are we just being defiant, or are we really just not understanding? So talking to our officers, it's really sinking in. At first, it was really like, whatever, Aaron, like, it is what it is. If somebody is doing what they're doing, they're gonna have their body slammed on the ground. Well, okay, but what if that was your child, and it was a small child who just didn't understand, maybe 4 years old, 5 years old, and now you're slamming that child on the ground into the, face into the ground and scaring the life out of them. And then you're taking that child to jail, and that child is sitting in a cell, not understanding at all what's going on around them. So we talk about how not everybody has the mental capacity of what they look like they should, and ever since we started having those conversations, I have seen the implicit bias lower. I have witnessed police officers going in a calmer manner, going in a way that they are bringing the situation down instead of escalating it. Because I know in our little town, I live in a very small town. We started out with 6,000 people. And so everybody pretty much knows everybody. But now fast forward, I've lived here for 30 years and it's, 16,000 people. Everybody doesn't know everybody anymore. So officers are just going in, and especially in our area, we have a lot of drugs. We have a lot of nastiness going on. And so they're just like hardened to the fact that it is what it is in Ukiah, right? So we're just going to go in and be tough and hard and strong and get our job done, take people to jail, do the thing. And it's been really rough trying to come at our police officers and our judges and our DA and, help them understand there is a completely different and better way that we can be approaching people. And maybe officers are not social workers, that's true, but we also can, have different ways of approaching a person. We don't have to be a social worker to approach them differently. So ever since I've done that, ever since our companies have been working with our police department, I can see a difference. I can see the implicit bias lowering. So I have hope that, we can teach implicit bias to police officers, and especially in our Black communities where it is very important that is, I really feel Michelle really opened my eyes a lot at Pepperdine with the conversations that we had. And a lot of our peers at Pepperdine opened my eyes to the conversations that we were having. And I feel like if we all work together and if we all push the same agenda, we can help our police officers with this implicit bias that they are facing every day.
But let me just come to Yes, sorry.
I mentioned earlier that implicit bias is it's the brain's natural tendency to look for patterns, and biases. They're innate, and it's always that question: are they innate in there or are they learned? But implicit biases, they are not set in stone, and they can be changed. And meaning you can change it. You can learn new techniques, new things, fix your brain to or condition the brain to new behaviors. So yes, the answer to everything that Aaron just said, and the answer to your question is yes, you can learn new things, new ways. Yes, implicit biases can be cultural conditioning is what it's called.
That's it. You've answered it. Now, can we also come in, or that's the answer? There is more to it. One more, but before that, Rafaela wants to say bye to us. So, Rafaela, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much. I hope to see you in other conferences. Thank you.
If there's a topic you want to discuss, suggest it. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Well, yeah. Well, look, the thing is, of course, you're talking about tinkering or in some way sensitizing a system. And what I started off with, Daryl, was that this is a colonizer's police. The basic foundation itself is wrong. That part of it by itself has to change. The other said putting someone in a lockup. That lockup is a colonizer's lockup. That jail is a colonizer's jail. You are putting innocent people into a cage. Only a colonizer could do that. We in our justice system, criminal justice system, say innocent up till proven guilty. And under trial is sitting in a cage. So you have to relook the entire concept of the way you want to look at the justice system itself. So that's where we have to go, tinkering with something where the foundation is totally not what it is supposed to be in the present situation that we are in. If we have evolved into a democracy, which I said earlier, we have not. So these things still exist and will exist up till that foundation of the democracy is not put into place. And then comes the mindset of the colonized mindset to do away with it. Then after that, then you look at trying to maybe sensitization and everything if required. But if the structure itself is formed in a manner which actually takes into account that, okay, today in this present time, we've moved away from the colonizer system. Now what the structure that we're putting in together, the people will be that we get in will be different. These things to even talk about by itself, I feel would not be required. That's my thought on it. I don't know what Daryl thinks about. Yeah.
You're right, Vikram, because in cognitive biases, they are adaptive. You always have to remember it's cognitive biases. Samantha had her hand up.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think that the trickiest part about implicit biases is that people might not realize they have them, right? Like earlier, I know we were talking about how some people will say, oh, this other person gets so emotional and I stay so objective, right? You know, people might say, I don't have this implicit bias. I'm just going off what I've seen, instead of realizing that this is something that, you know, may not be attributable to every single person, you know, who could potentially fit into a category, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge of them, is just realizing it's okay that your brain made this pattern. As, you know, Shelley was pointing out, it's patterns, right? It's okay that your brain made this pattern. It's not okay to treat people differently or disrespectfully based on the patterns that your brain has recognized from, you know, whatever situations or circumstances you may have been in before. I'll leave you with that thought because I also have to go. I just got a text message that my next appointment is starting. So thank you so much for including me in the discussion. I really have appreciated being here with all of you. And I know Shelley's there somewhere. You know, thank you, Shelley, for to Vikram and bringing me in for this discussion.
Well, thank you for dropping in, and of course other sessions, please join the sessions, even if it's for a short while. It's always good to get different perspectives. So, and Shelley wants to say bye to you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. I'll talk to you all soon.
Okay, I don't know, Daryl, what I said, anything on that, what in terms of the structure, the colonizer structure, will it, if changing the structure will change the people in the structure, and the certain discussions that we have to have about those people will change? I don't know. I mean, just thinking.
Oh yeah, that was spot on what you said. I wish I could have heard you say that 25 years ago, but you're right. Perfect example of what you're saying that I took away with it, and I've been saying this, you know, 5-6 years now, is maybe even longer, since I've been on the criminal justice reform. I was on police reform for years. Now I'm on the criminal justice reform. And what I can say about the criminal justice reform is exactly what you're saying. Listen to what it's called. It's called the criminal justice system versus just the justice system. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, well, that actually, in a way, it's going to be really difficult, only because that these are systems that we have picked up from, I'll keep using the word colonizer. We picked up from the colonizer because it worked for the colonizer. Say in a country like ours, where 5,000 bureaucrats were controlling 300 million people. At that time, we were 300 million people. Right now, we've won the race and we are the top at 1.4 billion people. So that's a different thing. But at that time, for that, they had to create structures, systems, laws, processes in such a manner that you could actually control or rule over people. So the people who came after that, we called it a democracy or whatever name we had to give it, but obviously it wasn't a democracy. Those people picked up those exact systems and they're using it. You are used as a police officer, you are used by the system. You are not, I mean, you're not even supposed to have a thought process on the system. which is where the issue lies. So I think to change that is a major, I mean, where is the root of the issue is what we have to first of all decide. I said not having a democracy, according to me, is the root of issue. 33% of the votes of a country, you cannot rule the country. I'm using the word rule here, don't mind. You can't rule the country with that. 37% of the people in the US don't even vote. They can change the concept in the country, but the divide and rule policies that are put into place. So the structure itself is something that I think we have to go down there rather than thinking of this being the problem. That's not the problem. The root is the problem. And from there, all this is coming through. I don't know what Erin thinks about it. Erin, what do you think?
Listening to you guys, there's a man here locally his name is Trent James, and he worked for our sheriff's department for years. And we have a little town that is it's a reservation. It's called Covelo, and it has 6 different tribes that were forced to be in this one reservation, and they have been fighting ever since they were put there 150 years ago. And our local sheriff has a job to put one sheriff's officer out there residentially, and it's an hour and a half outside of any town. Our sheriff would rather take the person off of the job and put them elsewhere, and they call it the belt, right? On 101, there's a belt, and they would rather have the police officers policing in the belt, which is predominantly white. It's predominantly, the towns of the large cities. It's predominantly all of the people in the area who are, oh my goodness, it's just predominantly white. And so when Trent is talking, Trent is telling us about all of these things that have been going on at the sheriff's department for years, and how the sheriff's department is looking at Covelo as it just is what it is, and people are dying left and right. And here recently they did a national emergency. Covelo said, hey, we're in a national emergency because a 16-year-old was killed by a group of 15 and 16-year-olds. And then a week prior to that, a 20-year-old was murdered. And the murders that go on there are shocking. And so Trent's opening our eyes, right? And Trent comes on to his videos and he tells us things like the police didn't come for hours when Khadijah went missing, a young lady went missing. They didn't come for hours. They told the local tribe that, maybe she was just tweaking and would be coming back. And so a couple of days later, when she didn't come back, then they started the investigation. And then it came out that she was actually removed from a home with a gun in her face. And so, and they let it go. They didn't even look for her. And she's still missing like 3 years later. And Trent walks through how the police department had literally just said, we don't care. We're not going to go out there and police the area. We're going to just let it be. And I believe fully that it is due to race. It is due to circumstances out there. It is due to our police department looking at the people who live there as less than human, and
this is something which is, of course, in Canada also, they have the same issue. They have a term for this. All these missing women, they have some term for it. I don't know what that, I'm not
the missing, murdered, and Indigenous women they have the red hand, right? We have that going on here because in the past, I don't know, 20 years or so, about 6 or 7 women have been missing, along with maybe 6 or 7 men too. But just recently, Khadijah was one that went missing, where it was just awful. The police department they didn't show up. They didn't investigate. They didn't look for anything until years later when they were forced to. And this officer who has left and has opened our eyes and has facts. He has facts that you can actually go and look at the evidence. That opened my eyes to the complete bias that is surrounding my area of racial discrimination, of all of the things that are going on that I, as a person just walking around living here, had no idea to until I started working in conflict resolution.
Okay. So now, but Shelley, what we have to look at is from the mediation perspective and the heart, soul, spirituality part of it that I talk about, and the mediator mindset, putting it all together from connecting it to DEIB, yes,
Yeah.
and all that. So something we just connect all that, but you also what we haven't connected right now is the aspect of empathy, compassion, neutrality, all that in connection to DEIB. I don't know. I mean, there are lots of other things to be discussed.
No, Aaron has brought so many different concepts to this topic, and it's so many parts of belonging. She's discussed where people are just totally left out, and there is no acceptance as far as allowing people to step into the conflict resolution window. They're not even being allowed to discuss whatever is going on because they're just being totally excluded. They don't belong in anything. They're not. So it's just disheartening. First of all, I guess I'm just blown by what she just said, and I've heard about it, but these are things that it lacks belonging, not only in your area, but all around the world. These are topics that need to be heard about all around the world. And it shouldn't be just said in just little bits and pieces, and like Daryl had mentioned, he's part of CJR, and I'm part of it too, criminal justice reform. And the one thing that I don't like, and we talked about words and why words matter. CJR is criminal justice reform. Take away the word criminal out of it and look at just the justice part, reform. Because if we say criminal, then we are still attaching that word to a person. And that person is more than that label. Yeah. So we're adding conflict every day. Every time we say criminal justice reform, we're telling that person you are still a conflict. So me as a mediator, or me as a part of the family of ADR, I can't keep continuously attaching a conflict to a person. I think that's part of, like Vikram, you always say the colonized mindset. I think that contributes to dehumanizing a person by adding that adjective onto their name, their being. I'm not saying, Shelley, is a part of I used to be X. This is what I was, but I am also more than. I am this. I am not only a criminal, or I was not only, and even with saying I am a criminal or I was a criminal, I still was more than. So it's, I think, taking away words, and with you, Aaron, taking away, well, we have the people on the reservations, and I have family members that live on reservations, and it's a separation, it's rules, everything is totally separate, and you can't touch it, the laws, you can't touch it. And so it's almost like they don't belong to the world. It's kind of like it's just a different world to them, to I guess I'm gonna just say the United States for this topic. I don't want to, because the laws and different things don't apply. And so when you said that the police, they didn't go in and help or save, this young lady or other people that look like her, she did not belong to a group of the law enforcement to even matter. She didn't belong. Because she didn't matter. I'm sorry. But she didn't belong. That's what I'm sorry, switch my words. She did not matter because she did not belong. So when a person feels or has a sense of lack of mattering to the world, or to law enforcement, or to anybody, anything, then it's going to be a situation where a conflict occurs, and then it's not going to be a resolution. And we're going to constantly see situations like you mentioned, and situations like Daryl's mentioned in Baltimore, situations like, you know, we've all seen with all type of conflicts that just are going to be cyclical and continuously occurring, because there are so many groups of people that are part of those out groups that do not matter. They do not belong. And that's part of the DEIB, that belonging part. And then it's that power imbalance part where, you know, I still have, when I label you, then I'm also letting you know that I have that power to label you, one. And then two, to say, okay, when I'm going to talk about that criminal justice system. The justice system, just think about the word justice system. Justice for who? What does the word justice mean? How do I portray justice to you if I'm handling a conflict? What does justice look like to the victim and the victimizer? And how can I help the victim understand that the victimizer at some capacity is also a victim? Not necessarily by the victim that the victimizer, you know, became victimized, but that person is also a victim of something. There's always a background to a behavior. You see what I'm saying? It's just like so many different facets to why a person does what they do, and it all stems to a lack of belonging, a lack of understanding, lack of cultural awareness. And that to me is a part of DEIB, why mediators need to have some sense of understanding, why there does need to be an awareness as far as the cognitive biases and how we need to input some type of action tips on, if Daryl mentioned, how can we change? You know, can law enforcement change? The answer is yes. You know, is an in-service once a year enough? The answer is no. You know, because you could put me in a class. How long is that class? An hour? Is that going to change you? 365 days in a year, and you're going to put me in an in-service for 1 hour? No, that's not going to change you. That'll change you for that 1 hour. But what happens when you leave and you go right back into that you have to totally, it's a total mindset change. We always talk about this 40-hour mediation training, and then people become a mediator. And we always like, how in the world are you going to do 40-hour training and you become a mediator? How in the world are you going to have a 1 hour in service once a year and think that you're going to change implicit biases within you?
Okay, so
I'll let you
basically,
jump on that one, Vikram.
okay, now look, let me tell you. Of course, issues and everything definitely are there. We'll keep discussing it. Solutions, or at least working towards a better situation. The way I've looked at it, Daryl, Erin, I don't know whether you people, of course, Daryl has not seen anything that I do. Erin maybe has. The concept being, get those people who have the mediator mindset out from wherever they are, in communities, schools, organizations, wherever they are. Let's first put them, in a way, put them together, but of course, not of the larger put together, but let's get them out. Let's in some way create what I call a circle around them. And let's start those good conversations going wherever they might be. These people would be able to put that together. That'll be the beginning. Those little conversations which will grow into larger conversations, and more people of that kind, let's put them together. Because what happens is we want to change society as a whole at one go, not happening. So rather than that, let's have this space, which of course you'll hear me say that, Darren, if you ever part of what I do, you'll have to hear this a lot of times. Activism, politics, and advocacy groups on one end. That's going to happen. That's going to be a money-making racket also at the one end. Let's create a space where people can actually have conversations, which is what I was trying to create, which is what I want to duplicate and people to duplicate. Just get those right people together. They exist. They're all out there. Is just to be able to identify them. And when those people get together and the good conversations happen and they are put out on YouTube, other people listen to them. So all of you have to have a channel having those conversations. Shelly's going to be putting it up together very soon. So just let's put it out there that yes, there are good people in this world. Yes, there is some hope somewhere. And of course, creating that circle around it, Might take some time. I mean, we're not going to be able to change things like that. It's not going to happen. But at least I feel that's the way I'm going to take it forward, because all these issues that you talk about, all the DIB issues or disabilities or anything else, if a person with a mediator mindset, and when I called about same mediator mindset, there's lots that goes into it, and we know in a way what all that is. But sometimes maybe we don't have words for it, which when I talk about, of course, heart, soul, spirituality, again, Daryl, you'll have to hear these three words a lot. Heart, soul, spirituality, the energy a person brings in. There's so many other factors which, of course, don't have words, but people know about those people. So they're all out there. Let's put them all together and let's see something good will come there, because issues, yes, lots of them definitely can be discussed and should be discussed. But on the other end, where are they going to be discussed? Who's part of those discussions and who is facilitating those conversations makes all the difference, because those things have to go into a positive solution-based direction rather than, like I said, the advocacy, activism, politics part of it, which lots has been happening. But now a little quiz for three of you. What year is our penal code? Just a guess. Our penal code, every country has a penal code. I'm sure you have a penal code. What year is our penal code?
What
year?
what
What year? Year. Yeah, a penal code. Daryl, what is a penal code? Is there where all the crimes are put together? What are the crimes and what is the punishment for the crimes? That's called a penal code for us. I don't know how you put it together.
So you mean like when our when our crimes were legislated, when
that legislation
said, hey,
so in our we have a legislation which is called the penal code. So what year is our penal code? When was it put together in the sense?
I'm gonna.
Well, you're quizzing me, and it's been way too long. I was out of school.
It's important. It's important to my discussion. I'll tell you why. Because you guys are not going to guess for whatever reason, I'm sure. But if you can, it's so nice. If you don't, I'll tell you the answer. It's
1780.
1860.
Oh, wow.
1860. That's what I'm saying. The colonizers' mindset has just carried on. You look at your own legislations. I don't know. I mean, what legislations you would have. Look into them and see what year they are. And if they have been changed, has the language changed or has the year changed? Look at all that. So those structures are just given to us. Our code of civil procedure. I'm not going to ask you to guess because you people, Erin is already in a different mindset. It's 1908. Okay. Our code of civil procedure. The colonizer put that for us. We continue with it. So countries are doing that. They've taken those structures. We have to get into that root. Those structures have to change. Beyond that, look, criminal justice system, you'll be tampering with certain things. Criminal justice system can only go forward, or any justice system goes forward, when the judiciary becomes efficient. And inefficient judiciary is no use to any justice system. So if you have to do anything, you want to take away someone's freedom for even 1 minute, you should be able to do it right there. Give that person whatever justice is required in that 1 minute. So are we able to put pressure on the judiciary? That's a colonizer's judiciary. No one questions the judiciary. They do what they want, kind of thing. So I have to question those things. Let's not question the individuals. It's not the police officer that we have to question. It's the what structure have you put that police officer into? So the judiciary, the laws that exist, all that adds to the mindset. So I think it's a much larger discussion rather than the aspect of course, what you said about 1 hour sensitization, of course, is not obviously enough. But I am saying if the structure changes, the people will change. The expectation will change. What do you expect a police officer? What do you expect of the police officer today is based on the laws that you have. So you are going to get people who will fit into the requirement that you have today. But when the structure changes, your requirement for those people changes, the mindset of the people who come in changes. So things change from when you hit the root of the problem, not if you think that I will tamper or tinker with something a structure which has a very, very, according to me, a very loose foundation, but it still exists and goes on. My thoughts. So, of course, Shelly, you'll get the last word. Let's just let a concluding kind of thing happen. Let Erin just give her concluding remarks, and then Daryl, and then obviously last word to Shelly. But I'm always there. The last word to the last word I will get.
I guess my words.
No,
my-
later. You come in last. But Erin
Oh, I
comes.
come in last. Okay.
Yeah, Erin comes. Yes.
So, listening to you guys, you know, I've written down a few things, but here in my area, we are facing the fact that our jail, our district attorney, and our sheriff's department are all on different pages. They all have different mindsets. They all have different abilities to say yes or no to certain criminals or people who are breaking the law coming in. And they also have the ability to hinder one another. So we are trying really hard to get them all talking about these things, about the implicit biases that they have, about the fact that we need to be more inclusive and diverse, and the fact that everybody should feel like they belong in our community. And then also the other thing that really, really bothers me as a human is that when I go in to help people with conflict resolution, I hear often, and it doesn't matter if I'm in a school, if I'm in a supported living environment, if I'm in the jail, if I'm, it doesn't matter where I'm at. The thing I hear every single time is, we don't have time to train. We don't have money to train. We don't have the people. So if I give you these people to train, I don't have people to replace them. I don't have the ability to bring them in after hours because we can't afford it. Or, you know, the teachers are already overwhelmed with so many things that they have to do. They just don't have enough time to go through one more thing. You know, I hear this all the time. So what I'm trying to do as a professional in my area is really break down that barrier. And so I'm following people around and I'm like, okay, well, if you can't come to a training with me, I'm going to follow you throughout the day and help you, you know, like, especially with people who are supporting developmentally disabled adults. I will walk around with them all day long and talk about things like, you know, it's really important that this person feels included in doing their banking, you know? So when you're going to the bank, you go up to the teller together. You know, you allow this person the opportunity to speak before you speak. This is about this person and not about you. You know, so we have these talks personally, but it takes people going in, thinking outside of the box, insisting that things change, and offering opportunities and different ways of doing things. And I think that the more that we do this, Vikram, that you're putting this together, the more that we get this out there, the more opportunities we will have as conflict resolution specialists to help people and to really make change.
But nothing is going to happen, Erin, if you just make comments on posts. You have to be part of the conversation.
I will join the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. So Daryl, how would you want to, I mean, your concluding remarks kind of thing?
Yeah, so I want to kind of like piggyback a little bit on what Erin just said, because it was very powerful. And I just want to add one other thing on top of that, but she's absolutely right that police, free trial courts, the institutions, parole, probation, all of those are in different silos and everyone's not operating together. And the minute something doesn't work right, or something drastic happens, everybody in those silos go like this and they point to the other person and say it's their fault. The last thing I want to say also, what Erin said was mental wellness and mental illness, and everyone has the right to do their own banking no matter what their challenge is. I have a nephew who I love dearly. He's 29 years old now. He has a mental disability, and I understand it, especially while I was in policing. But I think we spent a lot of time talking about how to educate the police officer in his or her response to that call for service. I think that part of that, and it sounds like I was beating a dead horse for a long time, is that we need to educate the caller. We need to educate the community. So the person who's picking the phone up and calling 911 and looking out the window and saying, oh, Johnny across the street, he has a baseball bat and he's beating the crap out of the mailbox. The police are going to dispatch that call just the way the caller said it, versus the caller saying, hey, I know Johnny, and he does, from what I understand, suffer from a mental illness. So the right person is dispatched. because what's going to happen is the police are going to dispatch someone, at least, in the era when I was in patrol. And the first thing the dispatcher is going to say is, Shelly, this is your call. Respond. Anybody with a taser, Aaron, anybody, Vikram, anybody with a taser, go back Shelly up. So I think the whole concept behind it is educating the caller as well as the police officer. I'll leave it there.
I think it's actually getting, first of all, the communities together and sensitizing the community as a community. I think that has been lost out somewhere. So there is no concept of understanding each other to even know who Johnny is. I mean, he might be living next door, but you don't even know who he is. I think that community aspect of that, and that's for me where the mediator mindset and the people who have that mindset come together, they'll have the responsibility actually of getting communities together. So that circle is actually something as a responsibility of putting that together first. And then from there, all these good things would come in. But important thing for me is that in a country or any space, up till I'll call the police or I'll send you to jail are not threats. Then I think things change. And let's see what all needs to change. And now Shelly is going to change everything. Yes, Shelly, please.
I wish I could change everything. One of the things I want to communicate is just to try to understand the importance of treating people fairly. I think that's probably my number one thing, treating people with respect and how you want people to treat you. As far as DEIB, I think that we have to understand in all walks of life, we have to try to focus on understanding the expression of emotions. Like Daryl brought up, someone could be beating, I think he said a mailbox. Understand where the behavior is coming from. It could be like Aaron and Daryl discussed mental health issues, how a person expresses themselves, different emotions does not always display a particular label, so we have to understand how an emotion is being conveyed and displayed. We have to learn how to see people as individuals. You spend time with different groups of people as mediators, as people, as community members, as humans. This will help us understand different cultures. It helps develop that culture, humility, sensitivity within us. I think we should work on our stereotypes, recognizing those things that we already know that are in us, those implicit biases, and just try to uncover, those things that are unconscious within our mind, just try to recognize what we know about ourselves, and then what we think the things that we don't know about ourselves. Just try to dig a little bit deeper within ourselves. Take time to pause and reflect, and that way you can learn about yourselves. You can only change what you know, and what you try to avoid, you can't change. So that's why I say take time and reflect. And while doing that, you'll be able to adjust your perspective, and you'll be able to see things from other points of views. Again, increase your exposure to other cultures, and as always, practice mindfulness. And I think that's the number one thing to having that mediator mind, and bringing forth that peacemaker mindset.
So I get the last word on the last word. The important thing I want to put out there, which I've been saying that, first of all, the first responders. Again, this colonizers aspect will come in. Dispute resolution doesn't have to happen in courts, and lawyers don't have to be involved in it. That's a colonizers concept. Get that out. The first thing you don't do is call the police. No, you have to have a layer in between. Luckily, in some place in one part of the US, at least the police has put out a group of mediators out there. They become the first responders. But of course, based on what is the complaint or whatever has been said. Now, what like Daryl said, if someone puts it out properly and tells the person what it's all about, the first responder will change. But of course, that's another aspect of how the communities are developing. So we create this whole pool of mediators available it doesn't have to happen on a physical space. It can be available on an online basis, but a pool of people, and it doesn't matter where in the world they are. It doesn't matter. It's the mindset that matters and everything else. So you have to have those people out there available to people and in all kinds of situations. Let's just get them in. That's it. Just someone can actually reach out. And for me, I've divided them into there's a mediator mindset, there's a peacemaker mindset. Both are required. Let's get the peacemaker in. We'll reach out to the other person. Let's see what it's all about. So my last words can go on for a little too long, and you people don't have the patience for that. So at this point of time, thank you very much for being part of this. Lovely having a conversation with you. And of course, Shelly, it's always a pleasure speaking to her. And she's going to come in July and she's going to speak her heart out. We're doing there's a show of mine called In Conversation with the Beautiful Mind. And Shelly has lots to tell us there. So that's going to happen. She's just waiting for the right date to give me. So Shelly, we're waiting for that. So thank you very much. There are lots of topics in the conference. Zoom link remains the same. Please attend them. If there's any topic that you want to specifically discuss, we'll find a time for it. So Daryl, Erin, anything that you want to discuss, you can tell me. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.